How often do you think about the fate and the future of humanity? Really? Well, maybe you should. The birth rate, the number of babies being born in a country, really, really matters. That's what we're talking about today. If a country doesn't have enough babies, and at the moment Scotland, the UK as a whole, don't, there won't be enough young people working and paying taxes in years to come to provide for and care for the old people of that country. It's hugely important, this, and it's not very hard to get your head around, just the basic theory there, but we don't really talk about it much. Politicians certainly don't, but our guest today does. He spends his life thinking and talking about all this.
Read the sort of the broad stats. I mean, it does feel like it's quite stark. So in 2023, Scotland had the lowest number of annual births since records began, and that's in the
mid-1800s. Yeah.
And that figure is 1.3 per woman here. And the problem is that is substantially below the replacement rate, which is 2.1 births per woman. And that rate is essentially the fertility rate that is required to replenish and maintain the population in the long term. So basically that leads to population decline long term.
Yeah, and in its simplest terms, basically that means you need to have as many young people as... you need to keep your family size going and not shrinking to make sure that we as a society have people paying taxes, working and paying taxes to look after us when we are too old to work. And as we're getting older as a society, as humans, as we're now expecting to live perhaps into our 90s, this is really, really, really big stuff.
Yeah, and so much of what we hear sort of day to day, for instance, when you hear the pressures on the National Health Service, is it's because we are an ageing population, we are living longer. We don't often hear this other side of it, which is, underlying everything, which is the fact that actually, no, we're not reproducing at a rate that we need to at the moment.
Largely, partly, because young people who are of an age where they should be thinking or would be normally thinking about reproducing are thinking, I don't want to bring kids into this world. It's really interesting, all of this. We cover all of this with our guest. By the way, the Scottish Government, I should say, is addressing this. We don't hear much from them about it, but did you know there is a population task force?
I mean, I do now, and also it struck me. It sounds something like it's from, I don't know, an Avengers movie or something. It's a very wide and a very important remit.
Well, they meet 4 times a year. Who knows what they discuss? But listen, let's talk about the bigger issue. I've been discussing it with Paul Morland, and when I describe him as the expert on this stuff, I mean I really mean it this time. He really is the expert on this stuff. A research fellow at Oxford University and the University of London. He's written 4 books about population. The most recent of which was called No One Left: Why the World Needs More Children. Here he is. Paul Morland, hello, welcome to Scottcast.
Hello.
Thanks very much indeed for being with us. Right, listen, first off, cards on the table. I have 2 children, but only 2. Am I part of the problem? Should I feel guilt?
No, you shouldn't feel guilt. First of all, I don't think it's a question of making people feel guilty. Secondly, if 2 were the average, we wouldn't have a problem. Slightly more than 2 is nice. 2 to 3 as an average is great. But people having 2 children is just fine. The problem is in many, many countries, including Scotland, including the UK more generally, including most of the developed world, and even some countries in the developing world you wouldn't expect, like Thailand and Jamaica, loads of countries in South America and East Asia. People are having far fewer than 2 children. And in some places like South Korea, they're having fewer than 1 child. And that's having enormous long-term and negative implications.
I mean, the Scottish Government tell us, we contacted them actually in the making of this podcast, and we got a statement from them, and they effectively say, look, immigration is the only solution to this. Is it?
Well, I don't think it's the only solution. I don't think it is a solution. So why is it not the only solution? Because the solution is to raise the fertility rate, something we've never tried to do in the UK seriously. Our politicians never talk about it, and the only one who has is, in fact, Keir Starmer, who said nothing to do with me. I'm not going to talk about it. So it's so the one potential solution is to have more children, but we're not even trying to do that. The reason immigration is not a solution is multifold. So first of all, we used to get a lot of Irish and Polish immigration into this country. Irish for centuries, Polish for decades. Look at their own fertility rates on the one hand in Poland and Ireland collapsing. The number of 20-somethings collapsing and going to be even lower in the future. Their wage differential with the UK has narrowed, or in the case of Ireland, gone above. So there aren't that many 20-something polls, and so that issue is much more general now. More and more countries have got low fertility. More and more countries are catching up with the UK from a GDP point of view. Don't necessarily need to come. The only countries which have very high fertility rates are countries with very low human development. And if we take a 20 or 30-year-old from sub-Saharan Africa, many have been needed to do many jobs, but they're not going to add to the economy in the way that, say, someone from Europe or from a country where levels of education are much higher. So that's part of the problem. Another part of the problem is that there's a moral issue about taking the best and brightest from countries that are trying to develop. It's said we have more health workers in Britain from Ghana than in Ghana, although Ghana has much worse health system than us. There's a moral question about we're busy, important, we're not going to have children, we've got more important and worthy things to do. Others can have children, bear the cost, put in all that capital. Imagine a country like Ghana having to educate someone to the level of being a doctor. It's a big thing, and then they go to Britain. So I think there's a moral dimension, and there's a political dimension, which is if you want to understand Trump, if you want to understand Brexit, if you want to understand the most recent local elections in Britain, what's driving it more than anything, if you do the analysis and you look at what's driving people to vote for parties like Reform, to vote for the AfD in Germany, to vote for Le Pen, is a sense of this impending rapid demographic ethnic change. Not everybody welcomes it, and they will vote accordingly. And they're entitled not to want it. But the point is that if we don't want mass immigration, if people are resisting it politically, there has to be an alternative, and there is only one alternative, and that alternative is for people to have more children.